the chest at any given time like in the original, maybe about 5 to 8 swoops that are Wario's gold mine size. You'll also be able to use the boat to mushroom boost off of it and over the hole in the floor. The mushroom is required because there's slippery muddle over the tarp that gives you less traction and counts as off-road, so you plummet into the water if you aren't careful. I also want them to add like a dark fog effect when you approach this track. I'd love for this track to have a pitch black skybox again, but with the day and night cycle I don't think that's a possibility. We can achieve a similar feel with a thick fog instead that has an imposing feeling of dread, so you get that feeling from not really knowing what lies beyond the track. Now that we have MKW mechanics, I'm going to do what everyone is thinking. Get rid of the railings. Why are you laughing? I'm serious. I'm not getting rid of the potential to grind on the railings of the track though. They're going to be replaced by rail bumps instead. Shh! Because they're still good for rail grinding. They'll kind of protrude a little bit more so they can have a second function of being a trickable speed bump. Kind of like GB Rainbow Road, except nobody from my generation knows what that is, so it's like these things but the long way.
The long way. Peanut butter, the long way.
The edge of the bumps will curve up like those little rail grind bumps in Acorn Heights that send you into the air. This is so you can more easily land back on the track when rail grinding near a sharp turn, so you're more incentivized to use them. Them being little bumps now boost the difficulty of the track similarly to how it felt to drive back in N64. Since we've come so far with Mario Kart driving over the years, there's been more emphasis on using the track design to amp up the difficulty of the driving rather than vice versa. If you're hesitant on whether the track like this would work with the Chaos 24 racers, then think back to the Boardwalk leading up to Boost Cinema. The road will be slightly thinner than that, but I think it's a very manageable track. Now we'll be able to maintain the difficulty that Banshee Boardwalk kind of lost when it became a retro track in the DS. I'm also curving the edges of the bumps that intersect, so we can have more slick rail jumps like in Airship Fortress. It's going to be a little tricky though, because with how close you are to the ground, if you run into someone you'll bounce off their head and likely fall off the track. And you can charge them into the lantern post to do little jump skips like in DK Pass as well. I think this takes advantage of the track's layout being above ground but simultaneously being pretty open in a way that keeps the same track layout but ingeniously invites using the game's mechanics to create fun shortcuts. And those small changes to the course go a long way in making a course like this great. This really isn't a change, but I'm leaving that hole above the bat chest open so you can do a feather skip with it. I feel like they initially wanted to have a feather in 64 but just didn't, and Banshee Boardwalk just had the hole there that there's a forgotten remnant of that choice. I get that this building has no ceiling, but like, come on, that shit is way too conspicuous, dude. But yeah. Now that can be fully realized. As for driving to the track, there will just be a connection between land and the start of the boardwalk. It's that simple. The fog that I mentioned earlier could make for an interesting free roam traversal mechanic though. You'd be navigating the foggy waters during Peace Witch challenges. And with that, that's all my changes to Banshee Boardwalk.